How's my hair?
It's like
great.
mine.
Nice, yeah. It's a good look.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone's in place.
When you've been church to begin.
What's that?
When you've been church. Everyone's so quiet.
Until now, as we start the event. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today for the Business Issues Forum on the upcoming Alberta election. I have to say, as I'm sure many of you are as well, that rather surprised at the lack of business issues and economic issues being discussed as part of the election. But today we've got a great opportunity for representatives from each of the major parties to talk about their party's perspectives on business and the economy. It is something that while the state of Alberta and its residents is important, we have to make sure that we are continuing to be a competitive jurisdiction, that we have the prosperity of this province to rely on into the future, and that we are setting our foundations right for a strong and vibrant economy. So we're very much looking forward to everybody's perspectives and positions on different topics. We are very fortunate in having the Calgary Herald as a supporter and partner in this event. We have Stephen Ewart, our energy and economics editor at the Calgary Herald, who will be our moderator for the event. And we have some questions that are organized, and then there will also be some chance for people to pose questions to the participants through the moderator. So let's begin. I'd like to introduce our participants. We have Mr. Rick McIver from the PC Party of Alberta, representing Calgary Hayes. We have Richard Jones from the Wildrose Party in the Calgary Acadia riding. We have Kent Hehr, the Liberal Party, from the Calgary Buffalo riding. We have Greg Clark from the Alberta Party, the Calgary Elbow riding. And finally, Nick Lepora from the NDP in the Calgary Acadia riding as well. So we have two folks head-to-head in one of the ridings, so that'll be an interesting discussion there. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I'll turn it over to Stephen Ewart to get the thing underway. Stephen.
Thank you, Adam. Gentlemen, welcome. And I will, my goal will be to keep us on time as much as anything, keep the schedule moving. We have a series of questions. They're based on the priorities of the Calgary Chamber members and the feedback solicited from the business community via Twitter and the Great Alberta website in the days leading up to the forum. I've been on the Great Alberta website, and I would recommend it to anybody as a chance to really get to see the business issues in this election. The questions are going to be structured around three broad themes: economic competitiveness, energy and environment, and workforce, immigration, and skills. We'll start with an opening statement from each of the candidates, and then we'll move into the question period. So they'll start with a 90-second statement. I'll start with Rick. Do you want me to get right?
Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Calgary's Chamber of Commerce for hosting us here today, and welcome everybody else who's watching wherever you are. I'm very proud to say that this Alberta province is doing well. Under this Conservative government, we are in a low tax regime, low unemployment, a very busy business environment where we actually are needing people to come in and take jobs. We have an environment where we are actually had the opportunity and put in place some long-term plans, which is important with the cyclical energy environment. And the fact that this is a destination, I think that is no small testament to how well this province has been managed from a political level over the last few years. We have a heritage fund, sustainability fund that was built during the high cycle of the energy and used during the low cycle, plan coming together, if you will. This is a place with a great education system, a place where both rural and urban, where there's great opportunities for Albertans, where their children can be educated here, stay here, make a good living here, and probably be able to afford very well to raise a family and buy a home here. This is a very proud environment that we have, and I'm happy to be here today to talk about it with you.
Now we have Richard Jones with Wildrose.
Great, thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber for putting on this event today, and I'd like to thank all the other candidates for discussing these important issues, not only for Calgarians, but for all Albertans. Wildrose is a party of new and innovative ideas that put Albertans first. And I'm the Wildrose candidate for Calgary Acadia, Richard Jones, and I've practiced law in the city of Calgary for over 20 years. I first started at a large national firm, and 12 years ago I started my own law firm. In 1974, my parents left England when I was 9 and came to Alberta. And they wanted to give myself and my sisters the opportunities that only Alberta could offer. My wife Leanne is a public school teacher, and together we have 4 children. And we want them to have the same opportunities that we had growing up. In this election, there's a clear choice between a positive and confident leadership under Danielle Smith and the Wildrose Party, or the same tired and crumbling government under the 41-year-old Progressive Conservative Party. It ought not to take a committee of culture of committees to make decisions, but everyday Albertans want clear, decisive leadership. We need to balance the budget. We need to save for the future, and we can do it while having excellent public health care and world-class public education. Alberta needs a government that sustains and fosters Alberta business in a highly competitive global economy. Now's not the time to cower behind committees, but to stand up and show true leadership.
Now go to Kent Hehr from the Liberal Party.
Kent Hehr, MLA for Calgary Buffalo, representing the Alberta Liberal Party. It's a true honor and privilege to be here, and I welcome you all and thank you all for taking your time out of your days to come hear about the future of this great province. As you're aware, I'm an Alberta Liberal, so I might comment negatively from time to time on things that are out there. But nevertheless, I know that I won the lottery when I was born in this great province 42 years ago in the Holy Cross Hospital. I think we have to call attention to, we're at a business forum, the state of our finances. Oil and gas is at, or oil is at $105 a barrel, and we're running our 5th consecutive deficit. Okay, $105 a barrel, we're at our 5th consecutive deficit. We have spent every last dime of fossil fuel resources we have brought into the public purse since 1987, roughly $250 billion worth. In my view, I don't think it's right that we continue to spend this at this unsustainable rate. I don't believe Alberta is better off without oil and gas than it is with it. I believe we have to get committed to future generations with a savings plan that works. And we're the only party who actually, with our platform, is running a balanced budget. Can you believe that? If you want to believe in conservatism, that is a balanced budget. We're the only party doing it, and we have ways to save for the future while committed to public health care and public education. We've made those the cornerstones.
Okay, now we'll go to Greg Clark with the Alberta Party.
Thank you. Thank you to the Chamber, to Adam, to Craig and Stephen for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about who the Alberta Party is, who I am, where the party comes from. The single biggest difference of the Alberta Party, we've only been around for 2 years. Instead of creating policy behind closed doors and telling people what we think and hoping to goodness that they agree with what we think, we believe in a democracy. It really is about what Albertans think. So the Alberta Party started with a process called the Big Listen. We talked to thousands of Albertans all across the province and asked them what they think. And that's where our policy comes from. Albertans told us that they're very lucky to live in Alberta. People have come from all over. Some of us, Kent and I, and perhaps others, were lucky enough to be born here in Alberta. But we're very lucky to live where we do and to have the opportunities that we do here in Calgary especially and in Alberta generally. But what we also heard is that we can dream bigger. That Alberta can use the opportunity or can use the strength that we have today from our resource-based economy to start thinking about the future. I myself am a small business owner, created our company about 6 or 7 years ago. We've been very fortunate to grow that company quite substantially over that time on the Alberta Venture Fast 50 list for the last couple of years in a row. So I personally understand issues relating to small business and what it means to be an entrepreneur, what it means to innovate. The Alberta Party proposes to support entrepreneurs and innovation as a way of diversifying our economy without also, at the same time, by supporting the continued responsible development of our oil and gas assets. And I look forward to talking with you more about that over the next couple of hours.
Thank you. And now, finally, it's Nick Lepora with the NDP. Hey, Nick.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the Chamber for inviting me to come along here to speak to you and to have a meaningful dialogue. Thanks for all the other people coming along here. The NDP's platform is based on prosperity drawn from our shared natural wealth, our resources. Our 5 key commitments are providing quality public health care, affordable electricity, helping young Albertans succeed, sustaining a clean and healthy environment, and making oil sands prosperity work for everyone, all Albertans. Our public health care system is our top priority, and we will make sure our tax dollars are used to improve health care for Albertans. Our plan for electricity will bring prices back to affordable levels after years of sky-high prices. We recognize that the most important investment we can make is in our children and in their children. We will use our wealth to provide the best in early care and education system. We will not turn our backs on the environmental problems. That would mean passing on the bill to our children and their children. We will all use our shared wealth to build a healthier environment for our children. Albertans own our non-renewable resources, and we should get to set the rules that will deliver a fair return to all Albertans for them. The NDP knows that with the right priorities we can make Alberta prosperity work for everyone. We know that in a province this rich, no one should be left behind. We know that we can have both good jobs and excellent public services that meet the needs of all Albertans. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Good timing. Just to explain to the audience, we will go through each of the candidates. They will be giving time to respond. It is a forum more than a debate. Every candidate gets an allotted time to speak, and there's not a cross conversation. We'll start with economic competitiveness. This has been identified as a top issue for Calgary Chamber members. We must remember that the global economy continues to be uncertain, and our economic fortunes could change quickly based on external events, including a financial crisis in Europe or a slowdown in the United States or China. Despite these risks, there has been little discussion in this election about how we can strengthen our economy. 4 key opportunities for strengthening our economic competitiveness include favorable business tax policy, restraining spending, strengthened royalty revenue management, and investing in our cities. Question 1. Small business comprise 96% of all businesses in Alberta and are critical to new growth and job creation. What is your approach to ensuring business success in Alberta, particularly for small business? And we'll start with Richard.
Well, I first started out as a youngster being a part of Junior Achievement, and actually share that same heritage as Danielle Smith. Small business, as it said, is fundamental to the Alberta economy. We need to cut red tape in relation to small business. I'll give you an example. Every year you probably receive an annual return from the Alberta government which requires you to check off who the directors are and who the shareholders are. Every year. There's no need for it. It costs small business money. It then is really like a tax on small business. It's through those small incremental things which we have in this province which is really hurting small business. We need to encourage small business. We need to make it more streamlined so small business can fully operate. We also need to make sure that the government itself spends within its means. We do not need to create a huge bureaucratic bloat, which has happened over the last 10 years under the PC government. 118% increase in government in the last 10 years under the PC government. You know it's bad when the Liberals and the NDP are complaining about government bloat. We need to reduce that. That's what a Wildrose government would do. Leadership begins at the top. That's where we will begin. Cabinet will take the 30% pay cut. Our MLAs will take a 5% pay cut. We'll get rid of the transition allowances which you've seen. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken?
There's no doubt that small boat business and small business owners play a very important role in our economy. But the best way to help small business is to ensure we have a strong public health care and public education system that allows their citizens to be healthy and as well as learn. And we've made that the cornerstone of our priorities. If you look at education, we're recommitting it to the neighborhood public school. We are doing that by ensuring that we eliminate school fees. We allow for a school lunch program where 70,000 kids go to school in Alberta hungry. That day is going to stop. We're going to start for an ability for world-class childcare and play centers to be created in this province with an investment of $100 million. Would that not free up people to start a business and to move into that? That is what we believe, and that's what we continue to commit ourselves to.
Great. So specifically on small business, I'm very confident the Alberta Party has a very strong policy in this area. Two specific policy initiatives the Alberta Party proposes: eliminate small business tax for the first 3 years of any new startup business to allow those small business owners to get going, get up over that hump. And I can tell you that would have helped a lot 6 or 7 years ago when we started our business. The other thing the Alberta Party proposes is to actively support entrepreneurship by teaching entrepreneurship in our schools, support entrepreneurs through small business incubators and accelerators. Let's find opportunities for entrepreneurs and small business people from a variety of different backgrounds to co-locate in one spot so they can create new ideas and create that economy of the future. When they talk about economic diversification, that's really what we're talking about. Oil and gas is important, and it will continue to be important, God willing, for the next many years to come. But at the same time, we have an opportunity now to allow entrepreneurs to help us generate that next economy for Alberta. Thank you.
Okay. Nick?
Well, at the risk of sounding like my Liberal and Alberta Party compatriots here, the NDP is in favour of helping small businesses. In fact, the NDP proposes to not to eliminate, but to reduce up to 1/3 the tax on small businesses to help them grow and thrive. As far as going into further into talking about education, this is a vital priority for the New Democrats. We honestly believe that we do not spend enough money educating our children and bringing people along to actually go out and join in the workforce and also to work in small businesses. Yes, it's true that the oil companies and the oil patch is vitally important in this province, but it's small businesses that really have the greatest percentage of potential for growth here, and the NDP certainly supports them.
Nick and Rick at this end.
Well, thank you. Your Conservative Party is already providing a great atmosphere for small business. Very low tax regime, very good infrastructure. Yes, we could save people $1 a year by saving them one letter, sending one envelope. But what we are going to do is we're going to provide the infrastructure that small businesses need to get their goods and services to market. The Wildrose plans calls for stretching out our current infrastructure program from 3 years to 4. That's code for cutting it by 25% as we're going into the next oil boom. Very bad planning. The Conservative government will actually make sure that infrastructure is in place. That's what small businesses need to get their goods and services to market. As well as that, we will also work with the federal government to help bring in the skilled labor and to educate our people. That rather than cutting back on education, we will actually help have our children get educated so they can take those good jobs and they can help those small businesses thrive using Alberta children as they become Alberta adults.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next question. Many economists believe that Alberta has one of the most competitive tax systems in North America. Alberta has a flat personal income tax, low corporate taxes, lowest fuel tax amongst provinces, no capital tax, no payroll tax, no health premiums, and no sales tax. What is your anticipated tax strategy for the next 4 years? This time we'll start with Ken.
Well, I also know that economists from the Parkland Institute, from the Canada West Foundation, from the government's own report, have identified the elephant in the room, and that's our revenue streams. And in fact, unless we believe we want to spend all the oil wealth in one generation, We're going to continue to do that. Like I said at the start, we spent $250 billion, all the fossil fuel revenues that have come in the public purse since 1987. That cannot continue to happen. Our tax plan is fairly simple. We will remain the lowest tax jurisdiction in the country, but we're going to ask our citizens who are the top 10% of our citizens to pay a little more, people making over $100,000. We're going to eliminate the regressive flat tax. We're the only jurisdiction in the world that has a flat tax that sees a guy making $1 million a year pay the same rate of tax as a secretary making $30,000 a year. It's put us in this hole that we're in. It has not allowed us to save for the future, and it has allowed to predictable and unsustainable funding. That day will end. We're also asking for a small corporate tax increase of 2%. We will still be the lowest tax jurisdiction in the province. So before everyone says we're going to go find someplace else to do business, there's still no better place to do business than here. So in my view, these resources are better put to either or, shoring up what we need to do right now, a balanced budget, is that not conservative, as well as an ability to save for the future.
Thank you.
Great. So with respect to my Liberal colleague, I'm not sure things are so terrible in Alberta, frankly. I think we're very lucky to live here, and I'm sure most Albertans would agree with that. As it relates specifically to the question about taxation, I think we need to work backwards with the level of services that the people of Alberta expect from us. What do we want from our healthcare system? What do we want from our education system? And if we can set those sorts of targets, then we're going to understand what is necessary from a revenue side. The Alberta Party doesn't advocate never ever raising taxes. But I think there are other opportunities, both in terms of streamlining existing systems, perhaps using some targeted user fees as necessary to fund our core services. But most importantly, work backwards from what core services are and have an honest conversation with Albertans about exactly what they want. And I think from that, we'll answer the tax question. Thank you.
The Conservative government here, we've had Albertans living paycheck to paycheck because the Conservative government has chosen low royalties and tax breaks for wealthy Albertans. I think the Liberal Party probably unfairly taxes hardworking Albertans who make more than $100,000. And the Wildrose platform doesn't really add up. Albertans need a plan that makes life better today and puts away money for future generations. The NDP would set aside almost $1 billion to end the Conservative practice of dipping into the Heritage Saving Fund. And we have a plan that we would have wealthy Albertans continue to share by implementing a progressive tax while holding the line on taxes for the vast majority of Albertans.
Mr. McIver? Well, in terms of a competitive tax regime, under a Conservative government, Albertans are fortunate enough to already have one of the lowest and most competitive tax regimes. In addition to that, our government will continue with some of the very good planning that's taking place. For example, putting money away into a sustainability fund when the resource cycle is high in order to smooth out the bumps when the resource cycle is low. You've just all seen a good example of that over the last couple of years. Well, the government has run a deficit. There's been no debt. Why? Because the money was put away ahead of time. Also, we will continue to think long-term on the big picture. I heard something about royalties. You know, back when the oil sands were starting, we were getting companies to put billions of dollars in. And to do that, our government gave them a royalty holidays or a tax break on the front end. Those holidays are expiring over the next 2 or 3 years, which is why the revenues from the oil sands will go way up. And Albertans will benefit for their schools, their hospitals, and all that stuff. And that is a result of good competitive tax planning by your Conservative government.
Richard?
Albertans and Alberta businesses like certainty. And Wildrose has pledged and committed to no tax hikes, period. The Liberals and the NDP, they admit that higher taxes are on the way. The PC budget only included an increase in the education portion of property taxes, but their finance ministers have spoken repeatedly of new taxes in the form of PST or sales tax, sin taxes, and healthcare premiums. In fact, in the throne speech, Premier Redford even said, let's have a conversation about income taxes. Do you know where this conversation is going to lead? increasing income taxes. And why? She has pledged over $7 billion in unbudgeted promises. $7 billion. Where's that money coming from? You know, to say that they spend like drunken sailors is unfair to drunken sailors, because at least drunken sailors spend their own money, not ours. A PC government will raise your taxes, a Wildrose government will not.
Okay, on that note.
How do I follow that one up?
How many drunken sailors?
The Taxpayers Federation doesn't agree with that, just for the record. They were very clear on that.
Okay, we'll start with Greg for the next question. Question 3. If the global financial crisis has taught us anything, it's that balance sheets matter. Governments across the world are struggling with deficits, including here in Canada. If Alberta is to sustain itself in the long run, we need to find a way to live within our means, while providing necessary infrastructure and services that Albertans need. What are the key elements of your fiscal management plan?
So I think having a long-term view is absolutely critical. I think that Alberta, again, is incredibly fortunate to be in the position that we are. I think if all projections end up where we hope they will, Alberta should be in a position of fiscal surplus in the next coming years and hopefully for coming decades. I think we need to look at a combination of investing those dollars, saving those dollars in the Heritage Savings Trust Fund, increasing that, but also investing that in the next economy. The one challenge in all that, I think, and it's something that I haven't heard really any discussion about here. We talk a lot about oil sands and oil prices, and those are very high right now. Oil prices are high right now, and we're better off for it. The price of natural gas is at historic lows. So what are we doing, and what can the government of Alberta do to unlock this incredible natural resource that we have in Alberta, which is frankly trapped in a lot of ways? My view and the view of the Alberta Party is the government has a role in facilitating and working with industry and other stakeholders to create opportunities to provide that particular product to market where it is in highest demand. And I'm thinking specifically of Asia. There is work underway already in the private sector. I think the government can do more on that in that regard. And what this really speaks to is a view of diversifying the economy not just to something beyond oil and gas, but looking at the broadest spectrum possible of our natural resource base as well.
The New Democrats really, we would like to see the Heritage Trust Fund have at least $100 billion in it by 2050. To use that money to help us diversify our economy, to grow. What we really need here is a much more diversified base in this province. We can't just dig the stuff up, pump it out of the ground, and ship it down wherever, to Texas, across the mountains, to China. We need to invest in infrastructure. We also need to do some of the upgrading ourselves. About 66% would be a good amount to look at for upgrading bitumen here in this province. It would actually do us, it would help grow our economy. Peter Hehr himself believes that we have overextended ourselves and that we should have slowed down, and we should actually work towards diversification.
Thank you. Rick?
Well, first of all, I will correct something that my colleague from the Wildrose says. He claimed that our government has overspent $7 billion. Don't take my word for it. Please check the Canadian Taxpayers Federation's site. They first said it was $3 billion, and then they revised it down by 2. So just be careful what you're hearing and who you're hearing it from, because some people here have no customization with the truth. Now, beyond that, you will see is our government continue with the good fiscal planning with our resources, which they have done, which has put us in this good position today, which is going to have lots of royalty revenues from the oil sands due to good planning. And I think the next big step for our government is opening up that conversation with the energy industry on bitumen and whether we can process it here rather than shipping those jobs down to the States. And I'm thinking to myself, we need to find a place where we can help the industry to do it with their money, not with government money now, and have Albertans benefit in the long run. that's what you can look forward to, is those types of long-term solutions.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine if you budgeted your household like you did the PC government budgeted Alberta? I'm sorry, honey, we're $2 billion in trouble. We would be bankrupt. And if it wasn't for our sustainability fund, which they rob from year to year,
our sustainability
we would be. Alberta's sustainability.
We put in place for them. Thank you.
We would be bankrupt. And every year they rob the interest out of the Heritage Fund. They rob money out of the sustainability fund. Are we in a bust right now? But guess what? We're not going to be in a bust next year, and they'll take money out of the sustainability fund again. We need to get spending under control. The other thing we need to look at is getting fair market value for our oil and gas. How do we do that? More pipelines. We need a pipeline to Asia. We need to do it. A pipeline out east where we've got refining capacity. We need to get rid of that bottleneck in Cushing, Oklahoma, so that we make sure that we don't get discounted prices on our oil and gas.
Well, thank you. And to go back to my point, and does anyone here think it's our God-given right to spend all the oil wealth in one generation? That's what we've done since 1987. In my view, that is completely foolhardy. I don't believe that Alberta without the oil and gas is as good of a place as it is with it. Okay, I don't think we can go back to farming and rely on tourism to be as economically prosperous as we are now. So we have to get a handle on saving for the future, saving for your kids and your grandkids. And the only way to do that here, all these gentlemen are saying, we're simply going to do more of the same. The Wildrose is even going to spend the oil wealth quicker. Let's give back $300 checks. Okay? That's not a plan. That's just up buying your vote. We actually have a constructive way to keep the lowest tax regime in Canada and still pay more as you go. Okay, what's the matter with paying for what society uses right now? And our plan addresses that, to allow us to do what we need to do today and to save for the future. And I don't apologize for our tax raises on that front.
Question 4. More than 80% of Albertans call an urban centre home. Calgary and Edmonton, Alberta's largest urban centres, are the engines of social and economic growth. They must provide infrastructure and services that are different in scope and scale than smaller communities. What is your approach to supporting Alberta's largest urban centres? We'll start with you.
Oh, that's a contentious issue. At the moment, no federal government, provincial governments do not provide the amount of financing that I think is necessary. We should be directing some of our revenues to cities. Cities are huge economic engines. Edmonton and Calgary, we account for over half the population. We need to... I'm not an economist, I'm just a retired printer. But what I look at is the fact that we need to put more money into our cities. We need the provincial government to step up, help us out, to make sure that we can build infrastructure in both our cities and really kind of just work together for the good of the province. This is, to me, it seems a no-brainer. We should be giving more.
Well, I was fortunate enough to spend 9 years on City Council and 8 years on AUMA, actually already doing that work, lobbying for municipalities. And while I was there, I was part of achieving the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, the biggest municipal support program probably in the history of Canada. And our government has actually put our municipalities, Calgary, Edmonton, and other ones, in a better position than almost any others in Canada. I think for sure almost any other ones. We are going to look at extending that program. We've committed to doing that now for a few years, but only in order to give time so that we can negotiate the long-term deal with predictable, sustainable funding that municipalities need. That is what the Conservative government plans to do. We are not going to have them live on the oil and gas overages roller coaster. We're going to give them solid funding. The Wildrose will have them up and down like a toilet seat. They won't know whether to start spending or stop spending. We're going to give them some solid funding in a straight line that they can work with.
Richard.
Wildrose will make sure that municipalities have a solid, stable income, which is coming in from year to year, which they know what is going to be. Population growth plus inflation. Municipalities need to know that in advance so that they can plan their growth. They also need to know what their infrastructure priorities have. If you go to the Alberta government at the present time and ask them what the infrastructure priority is in your neighborhood, they will not tell you. They will not publish it. Why? It's based on politics. It's based upon which municipality is paying the PC government money by legal contribution. Depends upon where you're going to be bumped up on the priority list. Not only is this illegal, but it's improper. The Wildrose government will not do that. We will have open and accountable government. We'll make sure that you know where you sit on the priority list. We will publish it. We will ensure that municipal infrastructure is looked after to make sure we have a sustainable Alberta economy.
Ken.
Well, what should drive people nuts in this room, and it does me, and Mr. McIver knows this from his time on City Council, is that 50% of your tax dollars that are sent up to Edmonton never come back to Calgary. They get spread up to prop up a rural riding machine that has been very successful in electing consecutive governments, but has not been very successful at supporting people where 70% of populations live, now in our major cities. Okay? That has to be fundamentally recognized, that now the cities are where people live. The cities are where our new immigrants are coming. The cities are where people who need services are. And that has to be recognized to have fair funding for our cities. And the Alberta Liberals recognize that as being a problem, and we'll correct that. The next thing, I'm sick and tired of big cities like Calgary and Edmonton having to go hand in hand to Edmonton. We should carve out an area. They're the level of government closest to their citizens. Allow them some tax room so they can actually make decisions on behalf of their local electorate, that they don't have to go hat in hand to Edmonton. Doesn't make any sense.
You know, I think, so the Alberta Party is the only party that's talked about creating a big city charter for Calgary and for Edmonton. Like you say, more than 2/3 of Albertans, as far as I understand, live in Calgary or Edmonton, and I believe we don't fund. It's not just a question of funding; it's a question of process. I think we need to change the tone of the discussion, not just as it relates to the relationship between municipal and provincial governments. There's really an us versus them. It's a real fight, and I think the same thing happens in healthcare. The same thing happens in education. Mr. McIver, with respect, the PC party's had 41 years to get stable funding in place.
And we're there.
And so, you know, but you know, clearly we're not, because we've got challenges there. So, you know, I think we need to change the tone of the discussion. And again, I think a city charter, a municipal charter, is something that we need to look at. The Alberta Party leader, Glenn Taylor, is a former vice president of the AUMA and is very well versed in this.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's the end of our first section. We'll now move to energy and environment. I'd just like to commend you all for staying in your time frame very well. So, Alberta is an energy-rich province in the U.S. market. The U.S. will remain an important and valued customer. However, with growing energy demand in other areas, particularly Asia, Alberta producers have an opportunity to access new markets and potentially obtain higher prices. Is there a role for government to support producers to access these new markets? What is that role and why?
Absolutely. And our government has already taken actions. The Premier has, in their short time she's been Premier, has been down to Washington, to Chicago, and to New York in support of the energy industry. She's made it quite clear that our government is in support of the pipeline to the West Coast. Gas is $2 here. It's $12 in Japan. We can get that liquid natural gas on a boat. We're very clear. We're supportive of this. We will help put the regulatory framework in place, and we will work with the industry to get that done. In terms of, you talked about the environment, we have the strictest, I believe, in the world oil rules for taking oil and gas out of the environment. And we will continue with that, and we'll work with the industry to find places for them to have a great reputation and to keep looking after the environment, and we will defend them from unfair attacks from other provinces, other countries, from people that don't care about us, well, they use our fuel every day, that they choose to attack us. This government has been very strong in supporting the industry that way. The industry can look forward to more of that support on a continuing basis, and you will see, as a result, I think, a ongoing healthy industry. Beyond that, we will also help the industry educate the people that they need for that industry, and where necessary, bring in people from other jurisdictions and recognize their talents and their skills so that they can contribute to this economy while they benefit from it.
Richard?
It's interesting that Mr. McIver brings up, well, we support the industry, but meanwhile the PC government supported a film which attacked the very industry which is the bread and butter of Alberta, the energy industry. A Wildrose government would fully support the energy industry. We know it's our bread and butter. We know that that's what keeps the lights on in Calgary and in Edmonton. It's important that we do so. We have to be more effective in advocating, not having a discussion, not telling the Alberta story, but advocating for Albertans. We want to make sure that those pipelines happen. We want to make sure that we've got access to Asia, to the United States, and if need be, to Europe. Because we do have to access those markets so that right now, because our gas is today under $2, where we can get 3 times more than that in Europe, 6 times that in Asia, we got to make sure that those markets are available to us. We've got to streamline our process to make sure that those pipelines happen. Thank you.
Okay.
Energy and the economy are two sides of the same coin. We have to do our best to create a world-leading environment for our oil and gas communities, not only to work in, but to strive for environmental success. Right now, companies do what they call self-reporting to the government. Okay? My brother-in-law is an oil man. I love my brother-in-law very much. But nevertheless, I want to ensure that our government is making sure what is going to our air, our streams, and our water. This will allow us to be credible in the eyes of the world. If we're going to be credible, we have to do things better here in Alberta. In terms of energy development, we're highly supportive of both pipelines going out to the west coast as well as the east coast. We have to lower the price spread in between WTI and Brent, and having 2 markets will allow us to do that, possibly even 3 markets. We have to look at even developing a natural gas hub here in the province of Alberta, where we can use our own natural gas to drive our cars, to look at our trucks, and the like. There's no reason not to be using that natural gas right now.
Great. The Alberta Party believes you can't have a discussion about the economy without also having a discussion about the environment. Although we strongly support the Northern Gateway Pipeline and Keystone XL, we think both are very important. My clients are oil and gas companies, and you know, we're talking with them and working closely with them. From a regulatory perspective, what matters is stable, predictable, and equally enforced regulations. And I think that's something that is the role of the Alberta government, is ensuring that happens. I'll hasten to add, I think we do not need to open up the royalty discussion. I think that was a very damaging one. I think if we want to gain and increase the amount of royalties that we reap, I think we need to find ways to increase the price of the product. The royalty scheme ratchets up as the price goes up. If we can find a way to get more than $4, more than $5, more than $6 for natural gas, that's going to have a significant positive net benefit on the revenue side of this province.
Nick?
Well, contrary to what many people will have you believe, that the New Democrats do not want to shut down the oil sands, and they do not want to make it impossible for oil companies to work here in this province. In fact, they realize that it is our most important resource. Pipelines, absolutely. We need the oil and we need to move it. We have the gas, we need to move it. We need to respect Aboriginal rights. At the same time, we need to protect the environment. Oil companies should be paying for oil environmental protection themselves. Our overall goal in the NDP is to bring royalties up to an extra $1.90 a barrel for improved public services and more savings, and we think we can do that through a new royalty system that gives companies who upgrade in Alberta a break, because we get 4 times the value out of a barrel of bitumen upgraded here. We'll develop a differential royalty system on bitumen and upgraded products, and we will require all new oil sands developments to have plans for upgrading in Alberta.
Thank you, Nick. Question 6 now. With the 3rd largest oil reserves in the world and other energy resources, including natural gas, coal, and wind, Alberta will play an important role in helping to meet the world's increasing energy demands. With our tremendous resource potential comes worldwide attention and pressure to improve environmental performance. What is your vision for energy development and environmental performance? What specific initiatives will you undertake?
Well, we need to show the world that we can develop our resources in an environmental sensitive way. And we haven't done that. And you saw that in particular in relation to two things. One is the lawsuits involving the caribou, because the government did not and failed to come up with a caribou management plan. The second thing is in relation to baseline testing on the Athabasca. That didn't happen. And so what happened? After prodding and prodding to the Alberta government, and after they again failed to really take any action, there was a federal provincial commission which will now monitor what happens on the Athabasca. We should have taken the lead. The Alberta government should have taken the lead on this. We should have been monitoring the water quality, both before and after. We should have got the baseline and seen what the current state of the Athabasca is. We need to be leaders in the environment. We need to protect our water, and our air, and our land. And a Wildrose government will make the polluter pay. If you take a look at some of the fines that you see presently against polluters, they're insignificant. We will make them disgorge their profit to the government, and we'll use that to finance our environmental prosecution and enforcement.
My goodness, the Wildrose sees a role for government to play after all. This is wonderful stuff. Hey, in any event, hey, we have to get to doing our own monitoring and testing. That's clear. We basically had the federal government have to come in and say, guys, you got to do better, because we weren't doing well enough. And the eyes of the world were on us because we didn't do that baseline testing, that we didn't have credible science and credible facts when we were telling them what our emissions are, when we were telling them what our water tables were. We didn't have that. That day of having government there to make sure that we are doing things properly will start. Okay? Here's another thing. When we are developing our emissions policies and the like, Alberta, in my view, is better be at the forefront of this than be a laggard. The eyes of the world are on us. So why wouldn't we do things better here than anywhere else? I'll be full disclosure. We're going to have a tax on actual emissions here. Okay? Not only will this protect the industry, it will allow us to say to the rest of the world, we're doing better than anyone else. So
Great.
Don't look at us.
Greg?
I think one of the important discussions we need to have in the province as it relates to the environment is water, fresh, clean water. There's a perception that we have essentially a limitless supply of clean water in Alberta, and frankly, it's untrue. Industry has made an enormous progress in using less fresh water. There's enormous leaps have been made in technology in SAGD and even traditional oil sands mining in reducing the impact on our freshwater resources. The Alberta Party would propose to implement a no net loss policy for our wetlands. I think that's very, very important. My firm belief is that companies in Alberta operating in the energy industry especially really truly do want to be good stewards of the environment. People who work for oil and gas companies, they live here too. And they really want the air to be clean, the water to be clean for their children as well. I think some of the work that we've seen around reducing tailings ponds in Fort McMurray is an excellent start. And I also do think we need to start have a conversation about how we price carbon. And I think many companies I've talked with are in agreement as long as those regulations are very clear and long-term, transparent and fairly applied.
Nick?
I think we're all in agreement that the environment is probably one of the most important things. To be quite honest, it's true that we have a horrible reputation outside of our country, even in our own country, outside of our province. I agree with what has been said before. I don't believe that the companies that are extracting the bitumen want to destroy the environment. They don't want to do that. They live here. This is their province too. The people who work here have a vested interest in making sure that the water table is not affected, that various studies that have been done in the past should be carried out further and investigated. Water cleanliness is vitally important. I think that basically the oil companies, it's incumbent upon them to actually use part of their profits to turn back the environment to as close as where it could be. It will never be the same once you've dug it all up and ripped it off. You know, you can't put it back, but you can do your best.
Rick. Well, you know what? Again, our government has the strictest environmental rules in the world for oil and gas extraction. That is fact. Now, I know that the Wildrose just wants to run around and find people to hit over the head, but we're actually looking more towards the future. We are actually looking towards investing in our post-secondary institutions and making sure we develop some of the expertise here in Alberta to come up with those new environmental solutions, to come up with the next way of extracting, not only extracting our current energy sources, but developing those future energy sources. We are advocating for our industry very strongly, and we are developing the energy and the resources educationally through our children to take us into the future. That, I believe, is where Albertans want to go, and that's where our government is going to go with them.
Thanks. Question 7. Ken, it's for you. As electricity bills spiked at the end of 2011 and early this year, Albertans voiced concern about electricity market and whether deregulation has worked. Businesses were also uneasy as reliable and competitively priced electricity is important to operations, especially those in manufacturing. At the same time, new transmission is being built to improve system reliability, market effectiveness, and integrate renewable energy. What is your view regarding the electricity market and the need for new transmission?
Well, first off, deregulating the energy markets has been a colossal failure. Any way you look at it, we had some of the cheapest electricity in the world back in 2000 before we privatized the grid under the guise that it was going to be cheaper, better, and all these players would come to the market. That has been a colossal failure of this government. That being said, I don't think we can go back and re-regulate the grid. It would simply cost too much to buy out contracts and to go back and do that. Simply put, we have to, the horse is out of the barn, we have to saddle the horse. I think our party would make the regulated rate option the default option for all consumers here in this province. We would also go to allowing people to buy out for 1 year in advance to be able to lock into savings. Right now you're only able to do 45 days. And I've kind of forgotten the second part of the question there. But on these transmission lines, the government's been their own worst enemy on this. They tried to do things in the back rooms and underhanded to try and avoid an Alberta Utility Commission hearing that actually discussed the need of it. I would like that all energy processes go through with that needs assessment and not done behind boards. It takes away people's rights and opportunity to be heard. And they're their own worst enemies on this. Alison Redford has run around saying we don't need these power lines. Now she says it does. Ted Morton did the same, and now she says it does. I don't know who to trust on this file.
Greg? So I think the deregulation of our electricity market, I agree, and frankly, I suspect most of us here would agree that it was not done well. But at the same time, re-regulating, I think, is not the answer. I think that it would cost too much, add chaos to what was a chaotic system. And I think that given that scale of change, I think we need to acknowledge that that change has happened and work within that framework. I think one of the important discussions that this brings up is how we engage with stakeholders. The idea of trampling landowner rights in the interest of building a power line, I think, is absolutely wrong. And I think there is never a problem that can't be solved by having an open discussion. And I think that while we may very well need those power lines, we may absolutely do need to modernize our grid, I think the way that we go about that and the way that we've historically done that in this province is very much an us versus them. And frankly, we're in this thing together when it relates to electricity or any other topic.
In my travels around my constituency, talking to people, one of the most contentious issues is the high price of energy, the wildly fluctuating energy prices, especially from seniors. I find this is something that has got everybody really steaming. And, you know, We have a solution. Calgarians are tired of paying these ridiculously high and wildly fluctuating roller coaster month-to-month surges in price. It makes budgeting very hard. Our candidates here in our plan to regulate electricity are getting great reception, as I said, at door to door. We do believe that we should re-regulate. We believe it will help consumers. It will certainly help small businesses. I don't think people should be forced into signing contracts either, because contracts cost more over the long run, and I've been cut off. That's it.
Like a power. Rick?
Well, I'm happy to answer this question. I'm actually in the electricity business, and I will recommend to you folks a website called theelectricityshop.net. Go on there. You will find 20-odd competitive retailers in Alberta where any Alberta consumer can get electricity, in most cases at a fixed rate or a floating rate, which will average out over the year at less than the RRO rate. The choice is there. This is actually deregulation working. Now, I know there's other parties that will tell you that there's no such thing, there is no choice. It's not true, folks. It's just not true. Further, we need to increase the production of electricity as the population grows, and having it close to markets is good, but the reason we have a grid is to protect us all. It's insurance. Something happens in the northern plants, we can get electricity down south, and vice versa. The brownout party of the Wildrose doesn't want to fix infrastructure that's 30 years old. Don't wait till the lights go out by electing these people, folks. Protect yourselves.
Richard.
Now that we've finished with the fear-mongering, Alberta is a dynamic province. And yes, even with energy efficiencies, we will need more electricity. But unfortunately, under my friend's PC party, electrical generation and transmission has been mismanaged. Currently, the consumer pays all of the costs for electrical transmission. The generators don't. We want to move to a system where the generators have to pay the transmission costs to get it to your home or your business. This will lead to efficiencies. The power lines, Bill 50, $16 billion worth of power lines. Coming for what purpose? Well, we found out from WikiLeaks, export to the United States. If there would have been a needs assessment, the needs assessment would have asked, is it for the benefit of Albertans? And likely, no. We don't need the DC lines. We need AC lines to upgrade our system, but certainly not at the cost of $16 billion.
Wasn't proposed.
Move now, Greg. Non-renewable resource revenues have comprised about 30% of the provincial revenues since 2000. This has meant that Alberta does not require a sales tax and is able to maintain a competitive level of taxation. This has also meant that Alberta has saved very little to reduce that reliance or save for future generations. What is your approach to managing Alberta's resource revenues?
I think we need to save some. There's absolutely no doubt. And I think we also need, as we've talked about earlier, invest in diversifying our economy. I think when we talk about diversification, again, I think a focus on small business is critical. A focus on entrepreneurship, I think, is critical. And I think we don't need radical change. I think we, should things go as projected, and let's hope they do, we're in a very strong position in this province. And long may it continue. At the same time, the world is changing. And I don't know how the world is changing. There are external forces that will impact our ability to continue to produce and sell our core, our main product, our main export being oil and gas. As those changes happen globally that are frankly beyond our control, we need to start to look at what the next economy of Alberta will be. I do think we need to start to also look very seriously at what we can do to support our natural gas producers. I believe that natural gas is very likely to be that transition fuel as we move towards a lower carbon future. And Alberta, very fortunately, is very strong in this regard. Technology developed right here in Alberta is frankly one of the reasons that the price of natural gas is so low. You know, the ability to extract tight gas and as we start to see the forces of those same technologies being used to extract tight oil. Regardless, I think we need to start looking at how we diversify our economy, and I'll hasten to add that does not mean, I think, the government picking winners and losers. I think the government does a terrible job at that. I think the government can create an environment where a business can survive and thrive.
Dick.
Diversification, it's been said by at least 3-4 people here. This is the key. Savings is the key, putting our money away for the future to invest in the future. We're not going to have this stuff forever. It is going to go away. We have to diversify. We have to make sure that we have enough money in the bank, basically, to cover that day when we're going to need something else to fall back on. It could be alternate energy. We could invest money in alternate energy sources, renewable energy sources. Just as an ordinary person looking it out, you know, you think, well, here's a certain amount of money coming in. What am I going to do? Go out and blow it all and then next week have nothing in the bank, no paycheck? Well, I think that we diversify, we save, we use our revenues to look out for the prosperity of our province in the future.
Rick. Okay. Well, I'm going to clarify something. The electricity lines built were well under what we were told. The Wildrose guy says $16 billion. He's high by more than 10. So just for the record, he's offside, not telling us the truth, by more than $16 billion in this half hour. Now, working on our resources, we need to, technology is the key. If we are going to get the most value out of our technology long-term, our resources long-term, it's about looking for the clean coal technology. It's about looking for not only ways to extrapolate and get oil and gas, but rather how to use it. We need to look as government, can we use liquid natural gas, become our own customer? To a greater extent. We also need to look at, and all of this stuff is going to be through investing in our post-secondary education, in our education. The Wildrose is looking at, if you check the budget, looking at cutting back on the education budget. They're looking short-term to get elected. We want to think long-term. We want to bring our children up to a place where they can help find the answers and take those high-tech jobs and even create, in some cases, those high-tech jobs.
What we need in Alberta is a new vision, and that vision is through Danielle Smith and the Wildrose Party. One where we use our money wisely, we spend it prudently, and we save for the future. We must invest our surpluses in the Heritage Trust Fund. It's a trust fund. It's kind of like your RSP. Put in, let's say 41 years ago with $14 billion. Can you imagine now you're 21 years old and you were retiring on that and you still had the same amount of money you put in initially? How good's your retirement? It'd be awful. That's what it's like now with our Heritage Trust Fund. Same amount of money that was initially put in. They're spending it. We need to save for the future. We need to help create, not government to create diversification, but allow business to diversify. How do we do that? Low tax regime in the province. We want to make sure we cut red tape so that businesses are attracted to Alberta, that young and old talent is attracted to Alberta, so that we have a province that really works.
Ken.
If you haven't learned from the past, well, you're not going to learn at all. We've shown over the course of the last 25 years we can spend every last dime of fossil fuel resources. And we are taking the advice of the Canada West Foundation, the Parkland Institute, in fact, the government's own report, and people like Jack Mentz, the UFC, who say the Tories will continue to do what they've done, the Wildrose will continue to spend it even faster with Danielle Bucks and the like. And I'm also at the point, I'm not big on us picking winners and losers. If we're really going to go to, if we believe that grade 12 is not enough, if we believe that that university is really one of those things you need in a knowledge-based economy, we're getting there. We're immediately lowering tuition and capping tuition rates. We're also going to get equality of opportunity here in Alberta. Whether you're rich or you're poor, people are going to be able to go to university with it being free by age 2025. That to me will create a knowledge-based economy.
Thank you. Now move to the third portion of the forum on workforce immigration and skills. Alberta has a looming labor shortage. By 2019, the province will experience a shortfall of 114,000 workers, especially in skilled trades, professional services, and healthcare. Calgary Chamber members identified workforce, immigration, and skills as a top priority for 2012. Question 9, we'll start with Nick. There has been much attention paid to reforming education in the province during this election, but there has been little or no focus on strengthening ties between the education system and the labor market. What is your position on strengthening connections between education and skills training and the labor force?
Yes, it is true. There's a terrible lack of skilled, technical people, hands-on people, people in the building trades, people in plumbing, heating engineers, you name it, Red Seal trades. This province, for years, in fact, ever since I came here in 1976, has consistently refused and cut the technical training in high schools. Not everyone's going to go to university. Some people have to go out into the business, out into the world, out into the trades. Apprenticeships are vitally important. You know, we need apprentices. We need people to be trained here. It's all very well and good saying bring in 100 welders from China to put up this upgrader. We have no idea what their real skill levels are. They're not doing us any good. They're going to go home in another, 2 or 3 years. We need to spend money, and this is what the NDP would like to do with the money that we get from royalties, is to strengthen education. It's all about our young people. It's all about industry. It's all about people who are going to help grow this province. We don't need to keep importing and then sending home workers just to fulfill a very sort of transient need. This has to be brought home more and more. We have to have skilled tradespeople, skilled workers in this province.
Thank you.
Well, this government, your government, Albertans, is very active on this file. You've seen big expansions to SAIT and NAIT. In the last few years, you see a lot more people being trained. I have a son who's a pipe fitter. I can tell you that there's excellent training programs in this province for the trades that the oil and gas industry needs. The Premier just announced new training spots for medical personnel in Lethbridge. This government is actually taking action to do those things. In addition to that, we are working with my friend Jason Kenney, our immigration minister, to find ways to get skills from outside of Alberta recognized, so that when you get doctors come here, that they don't have to drive for a living, that they can rather, either if they need upgrading, we can identify what it is, get it done, and get them in seeing patients. Your government's on the job, and through this, your children can benefit, because those schools will have places for them where they can actually take part in the bright future of this province.
Richard.
First thing we have to look at is how do we train Albertans for the jobs which are presently here and also going to be in Alberta in the future. And we have to make sure that we have strong trades programs and strong university programs. I was in a Tim Hortons the other day, and a young fellow asked me, he said, how do I get my first job? Here's a person that's graduated from university. We need to have incentives to employers to make sure that these first-year students can find new jobs. We have to examine that so that we get Albertans working in Alberta. Second thing we've got to look at is there's an untapped resource here in the province. All those people who have come here already, doctors and nurses, foreign trained, how do we get them accredited? We need to look at that. So perhaps before we even go outside the province, how do we accredit these professionals that we have? And yes, Jason Kenney is doing a good job. Not related to this progressive conservative government, but related to the Harper government. And we will work with them to make sure that works.
Ken.
I guess we should point out that it should be highly concerning to everyone in this room. We have the highest high school dropout rate in the country right here in Alberta. We also have the lowest university participation rate in this country right here in Alberta. Okay? If we are going to get serious about a knowledge-based economy, if we agree that we all have heard that grade 12 is not enough, we got to commit to going to that lifelong learning cycle to get us to that next stage, if we believe any of that. And we've founded our platform on that post-secondary piece that's going to be available to everyone, whether you're rich or poor. We also have the third highest tuition rates for university students right here in this province. How can that be? How does that encourage learning? We're going to reduce those immediately. Hey, on the immigration file, I believe Alberta should be in charge of its own immigration policy. We are more unique in terms of Quebec in terms of this. We have a vibrant economy. We have to be in charge of our own destination on that front.
Great. So there are many, in fact, maybe most places in the world who would be amazed to hear that there are 5 people sitting up here at the room talking about ways that we can fill jobs that are going begging. So, you know, we have to, I think, acknowledge the fortunate position we're in Alberta. At the same time, it's obviously a challenge because that could constrain our economy and constrain our growth. So I think we need to think of this in 2 ways, short-term and long-term. Richard, I agree with you completely on focusing on how we can help students get their first job. I think it's an excellent idea, and I congratulate you for that, and I'm certainly fully supportive of it. I think we need to look at credentialing. Look at those people who, of course, are already here, people who can immigrate to Canada, but also look at interprovincial barriers. There's a significant difference in credentialing between provinces. As far as I know, physics is physics. So we should find ways to make that process as absolutely smooth as possible. At the same time, I think we have to be a little careful we don't go too far the other way. We need to make sure that we do adhere to standards, that people who we credential from other jurisdictions in fact have the skills that we need, and we don't put Albertans at risk.
Thank you. 10th question now. One of the solutions to alleviating labor shortages is immigration. One of the challenges with the immigration system, however, is that qualified professionals are unable to practice their field due to constraints imposed by trade associations and licensing bodies, which are provincially regulated. What will your party do to address this issue? Rick, we'll start with you.
Well, on this issue, we have our party and our government has taken actions with the partnership with British Columbia. I know that trades can go back and forth. Their qualifications are recognized a lot more easily than they have been in the past, and we'll continue to do that. Our government is talking with several other jurisdictions across Canada about common recognition of qualifications so that when people come here, they can work up to their potential. When they don't, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help them, it doesn't help their family, and it doesn't help we Albertans. If we can get them employed at a higher level, they make more money, they contribute more to the tax regime, which brings us our health care and our education, but we can't rest. We still need to work internationally with the federal government. We're doing that, but we need to continue and look for more and more jurisdictions, both internationally and within Canada, where we can have that flow of people here when they need them, and where people trained in Alberta can make a good living and without worrying about being restricted on where they can make that living. It's happening, but we're not finished yet.
Hey, Richard?
So going back to one of the points is, how do we recognize qualifications of a professional who is already here in Alberta? And I remember speaking about this and was ridiculed by the PC party by saying that the government could help. They said, well, let the Alberta Medical Association worry about it. Let the professional engineers worry about it. Well, no. Let's be proactive. Let's show leadership. Let's work with the AMA. Let's work with other professional accrediting agencies to determine how can we accredit these people who are already here within the province, that already know Alberta. They already have roots here in Alberta. So I think we should tap that resource first. Then we should look at our own Alberta immigration policy. And I don't think we can say, well, we're just going to take your professionals. Because if you take a look, you remember back in the boom times, you went to Safeway, it was closed. Why? They couldn't get help. You went to Tim Hortons, it was closed at 10 o'clock. They couldn't get help. We need people to do all of our jobs here in Alberta. We welcome everyone to Alberta.
Well, one of the jokes that has become all too common here, and we hear all the time, is the quickest way to get a doctor is let's call a taxi. Okay, and we see that here in Alberta, where 50% of the people here who are recent immigrants and even new citizens are not able to get their foreign credentials recognized. That has been a failure of proportions of this government, and I believe government has a role to play in ensuring that people who are qualified are working up to their best potential. I must almost comment on the temporary foreign worker program. Some of you might have heard the saying that once the girl's seen Paris, she's not going back to the farm. Okay, what we are setting up here with our temporary foreign workers program is, I believe if you're good enough to work here, you're good enough to live here. We have to set and work towards that full citizenship, because otherwise we're setting up different tiers of immigrants battling each other. Are you a temporary foreign worker? Are you a PR? Are you a citizen? And guess what? They're not going back anyway. So let's get to that and let's work towards that.
Thank you. Greg.
I think, I'm not sure which farm you're talking about, but our family farm in southern Saskatchewan is pretty darn nice, so I think she may come back.
Okay.
But, you know, I think, you know, there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about in this regard. I mean, I do think that we're all broadly in agreement here in terms of how we expand the recognition of credentials. But one thing I think we need to be mindful of is the partnership and the relationship we have with those credentialing bodies. I think Medical Association is perhaps one easy example. The relationship that the Government of Alberta has with the Alberta Medical Association is tense at best. And I think if we can change the tone of that relationship to one of trust and mutual respect, we can work more closely with the Alberta Medical Association and others to try to break down some of these barriers. Let's be frank, I think there is potentially some risk that those credentialing bodies are being a little protective of their own turf. And I think we need to find ways to work with them to realize that, look, we're in this thing together. It's in everyone's broad interest in this province that we bring in the professionals that we need and the apprentices that we need, and the skilled labor that we need to support our economy. And the best way to do that is by partnering and changing the tone of the discussion with those credentialing bodies.
Nick.
Yes, I agree with you that the regulatory bodies that exist, yeah, I think they are being territorial. I think that they're being a little more than what I would call it obstructive. I believe that the government has a role to play. The federal and provincial governments have a role to play in immigration, in having people who come here with various technical qualifications from other countries. Some, I know that it's been said that some are better than others. You know, some more closely represent what our standards are here. We must find a way to allow people to come here and be able to afford to work and actually go back to school and get their credentials up to speed. We need to do that. As far as the temporary workers go, I agree with Kent Hehr. It's absolutely impossible. We cannot send these people home. They're here. They should stay here. We should have them here working, and they should be allowed to apply to emigrate to this country, because let's face it, they're doing the hard lifting here for us.
Okay, next question. The Aboriginal population represents the largest unutilized pool of talent in the country. They are younger than the population at large and have a higher participation rates in the labor force. However, Aboriginal unemployment rates are often 3 times higher than provincial average. How will you fully engage the Aboriginal people in the economy and the labor force? Richard, we'll start with you.
Well, looking at Aboriginal affairs, I think we've treated them poorly. We really have. We need to build a better relationship, a partnership with them. We need to have more trust between the Alberta government and our Aboriginal peoples. We need to respect their culture, their rights, the environment they speak a lot about. We need to respect that as well. So we need to start having a new relationship so that we can see where each other stand. And do we need to involve them in the economy? Absolutely. They are an untapped resource. But we can't dictate the terms. I think that we have to come to it together and collaborate to see exactly how they're going to participate or in what manner.
Well, for far too long, the Alberta government has not played a role in our Native communities. They've simply used the excuse that this is a federal government responsibility. Any money that is put into our Aboriginal affairs is used to consult. Okay? We have to get serious that these people are our citizens, that they are our brothers and sisters. If a school needs to be built on a reserve, go build that school. Send the federal government a bill. But do not wait for, like happened at one case in northern Alberta, an energy company had to come and finally make the school. Government has to be committed to finding those skills. And the best way to move our Aboriginal people forward is through education. It's through getting them the opportunities they need to build their lives. And one of the things that's most exciting about it is starting on that early learning education portion. We're putting $100 million into that early learning childhood centers. It's going to see our Native population take part more fully in our economy.
Thanks. Greg?
I think the best way to help Aboriginals move forward is to ask them how they would like to move forward. And I think engaging in a fulsome and honest dialogue is critical. There are many success stories in northern Alberta of successful Aboriginal entrepreneurs. And I think we need to find ways of working with those entrepreneurs for them to mentor other Aboriginal business owners. But it's not just about business. A lot of it is very much about education. As we've talked about earlier, Alberta has the highest high school dropout rate, particularly chronic amongst our Aboriginal population. I think we need to work very hard to find ways of ensuring that our Aboriginal population stay in school, succeed in school, and they'll find their own path as part of as an active participant in both our economy and in our society.
Nick.
Aboriginal peoples. It's a very, very hard subject to discuss. I noticed that there probably are no Aboriginal people here at the moment. You know, we have to understand that their culture, the way they have lived for the last 100 or so years on a reservation system, has done nothing for their self-esteem. There are chances, there are organizations, there are the Alberta Federation of Labour is very, very interested in helping Aboriginal people go into their own construction companies to work in the oil patch. In fact, up in the tar sands, there are some companies that utilize 90% Aboriginal workers, and that's a start. But we have to be very careful. We have to be very mindful of the fact that there are people who do not take kindly and will not be pushed. They will not be condescended to anymore. We have to be careful.
Thank you. Rick, last word.
Well, this is a difficult issue, and one that across Alberta you'll see a variety of different results. You'll see the Satina Reserve right here next to Calgary, where there's a wonderful integration of a lot of their members in the economy here in Calgary and area. I would say very successful. Certainly not 100% successful, but a lot of success stories. You'll see other municipalities in Alberta where perhaps the exact opposite is true. This is not a one-size-fits-all deal. But yeah, it's a two-way street. We have to continue extending a helping hand. We have to encourage them to join our economy in the education, in the workforce, in socially, and we also have to allow for those that don't want to join the rest of our society to do that too, because they actually have the rights both ways. So I think I think we need to continue to do the good work that our government's doing, but I'm not sure that work will be completely done, and we do need to have a look at the First Nations people in prisons to see if we can find a way to divert where they are to other places right now, because there's too many there.
Thank you. So now our last question. We'll start with Kent on this one, but the number of people exiting the labor force is expected to exceed the number of people entering for the foreseeable future. Helping older workers stay in the workforce will alleviate pressures on our social safety net. What is your party's plan to address the demographic challenges confronting Alberta's labor force?
Well, I've answered this a number of times. It's a recommitment to public education, both at the start of people's life, moving the best government investments are in education in the 2 through 5 range. We have a plan that addresses that, the only party that has a plan that's actually immediately capping tuition at university by at where they are now, and actually reducing them next year by $250, but having the aspirational goal, and I think it's prudent with good planning and actually a fiscal plan that actually raises some revenue to allow us to do the things we need to do today, as well as save for tomorrow. By having university education, a place to get your skills that you don't have to pay, it's not regardless of whether you're wealthy or poor. That is the whole key to moving to a knowledge-based society. A way to keep people lifelong learning is a recognition that grade 12 is not good enough anymore, that you need these skills. And now the Alberta Liberals have recognized that, and we're not just giving lip service to it, and we're going like the direction of other societies. We're moving to allowing our citizens to be unencumbered by a price tag to get the skills they need to work.
So I respectfully disagree that university should be free. I think every student I've talked with believes they have some stake in funding their own education. Student debt shouldn't be outrageous. I think we should look for ways of limiting student debt, or perhaps allowing students to earn their way out of debt, or at least a portion of that debt. But I think simply giving something for free is not the answer. As it relates to our aging workforce, as has happened in every other case, baby boomers are going to change the rules. They're going to change the rules of the workplace. They're going to change the rules of what retirement means. And I think we need to acknowledge that and make sure that our regulations keep up with that changing workforce. It's a huge asset. I did my specialization in my MBA in knowledge management, so I have some background in this. If we can keep workers who have a vast amount of experience engaged even on a part-time basis or on a consulting basis, find ways to encourage and enable them to do that, work with industry to ensure that that happens. I think that will allow us to take advantage of their knowledge at the same time while innovating with the next generation coming up.
Hehr.
The aging workforce, yes, it's a fact. It's happening. We are going to be in a situation in the not too distant future where there will be 4 or 5 people who are retired and who are going to be being supported by the workforce. The opportunities to utilize older workers, and this is something that's going to happen, and it's going to be forced upon governments, because we're going to have a large number of people who have specific skill sets that are very, very important. We can't just rely on education. We're going to have to utilize these people in the workforce. We're going to have them, as my friend here said, we can use them as consultants. We have actually done away with mandatory retirement, I believe, in this province. So there is no reason for us not to utilize the people that we have, and to actually encourage everybody in this province. Education is the most important thing. We need to educate our younger people, and to become part of a vital economy in this province.
Rick.
Well, I think this is largely a good news story, because this is a province where we have in the top 5 education systems in the world by independent reports. So the people that have been in Alberta a long time are in a very good position to be qualified for jobs. And while the Wildrose may want to cut back on that system, we think it's good to maintain it. The other thing is to try to help people remain healthy as long as they can. While the Wildrose also wants to cut back on the healthcare system, we think it's better to encourage people, to help them stay healthy, and that will help them stay in the workforce longer. Beyond that, I think the best thing we can do is to keep the low tax regime that we have, that keeps lots of jobs available, so that those seniors that either need to keep working or choose to keep working will have those options. I think they largely do now. And I think that the one thing that I think that we maybe should take a look at is to see how their pensions are treated at time that they retire, so that if they keep working, that they can benefit to the greatest extent that they can from that additional revenue that they earn for themselves.
Perhaps the only thing the PC party is fearful of is in relation to cuts, is the cutting of MLA pay and cabinet pay by a Wildrose government. We will not cut any frontline services, not in education, not in healthcare.
Read the budget.
What we will do is this. We know that there is an aging population. Our demographic is slightly different than the rest of Canada. We do have a slightly younger population. Now, is it necessarily education? Does everyone have to go to university in the province? No. Others may decide to go to vocational schools. We have to make sure that those are well funded. The other, some may decide not to go to vocational school or university. They may decide to be entrepreneurs. And we see that entrepreneurial spirit in the province of Alberta. We need to encourage that. And how do we do it? By cutting government spending, making sure that we are not having an overburdensome tax system, to make sure that we cut government red tape so that it is easy to carry on business here.
Thank you. You started?
I don't know.
Yeah, you did.
Sorry.
I thought it was me for a second.
There you go.
I think that brings us to an end of our questions, and we'll take a few minutes. I just want to thank everyone for adhering to the time and for the civility and really good answers to all those questions. I learned a lot. We're going to go in the opposite order from what we started in introductory statements. So we will start with Nick at the far end for his closing remarks.
Well, I'd like to say thank you very much to everybody here for attending. I think it's been very useful, worthwhile discussion. I know that I have seen some very useful comments and things brought up by my colleagues here. I can't say that I agree with all of them, but I'm not here particularly to be partisan. I'm just here to actually reiterate that the New Democrats, they are a party that believes in equality, in fairness, fairness for all Albertans, fairness for working people, fairness for seniors, fairness for business people, fairness for everyone. We do not want to see this economy destroyed, but we do believe that we need to utilize the revenues that come from this very, very wealthy province of ours are used to the very best interests of the people of this province.
So thank you again for the opportunity. Of the thousands of Albertans I've talked with as part of this process, I've heard a lot about change. Like we've talked a lot about here today about change. And with respect to Mr. McIver, a party that's been in power since I was 6 months old can't possibly be change. With respect to Wildrose, I'm not sure that is frankly the type of change that we're after. When a party is willing to raise issues like conscience rights, when we have some comments like we did the other day from your candidates that are not just disparaging to gays and lesbians, but actively hostile, that is not the kind of change that Albertans want. That is not reflective of who we are as Albertans. I think what we need in this province is a change in tone, a change in the type of politics that we engage in. It's not as much about the what, it's about the how. It's about how we engage in politics and how we engage in conversations with the people of Alberta. It's not about politicians telling people what we think, it's about the people using us as a vehicle to enact appropriate policies. So thank you again for your time, and I'll be around for questions afterwards. Ken.
Well, I'd like to finish by thanking the Chamber and thanking all of you for coming out and hearing what the different views are, because I believe there are some stark differences between what the Alberta Liberals are proposing, what the Tories are proposing, and the Wildrose are proposing. We believe in equality of opportunity, whether you're wealthy or poor, public health care, public education. With those skills, you can build your life. And you here in the Chamber are particularly interested in finances. And really, read Canada West report, Parkland Institute's report, Jack Mintz's report, even the government's own report that says finances, revenues need to be raised. We're the only party who really says, we agree with this. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to spend all of the oil wealth in one generation. And to me, that is unconscionable. And we will not sit here and do that when public investments need to be made. And it's a much more conservative principle to run a balanced budget, which we are doing right now, than anything that is being proposed up here. Thank you.
Richard.
What we've seen from this crumbling progressive conservative government is a failure to balance the budget, while at the same time paying MLAs $1,000 per month for doing absolutely nothing. They've forgotten the everyday Albertan. If the PC government MLAs can't see past their own paychecks, how can they possibly have a clear vision for the rest of Alberta? A Wildrose government will balance the budget, cut red tape, and improve public education and public health. We will create a competitive landscape which will allow Alberta's business community to thrive and prosper. During this election, we're the only party that is committed not to raise taxes, and our campaign promises are prudent and responsible. Despite her promise to run on her budget, Alison Redford has made close to $7 billion in unbudgeted promises. In order to fulfill her promises, she must either raise taxes or continue the habit of raiding our savings. We're the only party with a positive vision, which will put Alberta back on track.
Rick.
Okay, thank you. Well, interesting, my colleague, my Wildrose friend here, she talked about the $1,000 since her party leader sat there for 2 or 3 years. Well, 3 out of 4 accepted the same money. Now, we were wrong, they were wrong, everybody, every party that sits in the legislature was wrong on this particular issue. Interesting that you should raise it.
Did you pay it back?
We also have a pledge to not increase taxes and while maintaining services rather than cutting them. We've heard $16 billion of exaggerations and non-truths here today. Folks, before you sell your boat for $300, the same $300 that our government would put into 50 schools, and then another $300 if you sold that, we would rehabilitate 70 more schools. That is the future. That is what's going to bring business to this province and a future for our children and our grandchildren. The good job we've done with the royalties is going to raise a lot more from the oil sands in the future years to create additions to the Heritage Fund and secure our future and our business future. Progressive conservative government is the answer to these problems.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was great. I would encourage everyone to visit the Great Alberta website, as well as the websites for all the parties here as well. I think we've learned an awful lot here today, and we can, it was really an interesting and informed debate. Adam, would you like to close it down? That was fun.
Question from the floor.
Sorry, that was my error. We did have a question sort of formulated before. We aren't taking questions from the floor off the moderator, so my apologies for setting that expectation up front. But I do want to first off thank our candidates, Mr. McIver, Mr. Jones, Mr. Hehr, Mr. Clark, and Mr. Lepora for taking the time to share your party's perspectives on important business issues. I want to thank Stephen for moderating today and the Calgary Herald for their support. And thank you for joining us today and listening and taking an active interest in what the business issues for this province are going to shape out like, because I think it is very important, something that we aren't seeing in some of the more general discussions on the election. You've heard a lot today, something from every party. We, the Chamber, have our platform on greatalberta.ca, which Stephen mentioned. So if you're looking for some additional fodder for business issues, please check that out. But most importantly, we just encourage everybody to get out on April 23rd and to exercise your right, as every Albertan can, to vote in this upcoming election, because it does set the course of our government. Sets the course of our business environment and our future prosperity. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today, and please stick around for any of the candidates who may wish to answer any questions you have later. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Good job. Good to see you, Rick. Good luck.